I feel incredibly honored and to be invited to speak here. I wanted to be an armed forces officer. It may come to you as news that journalism wasn't my first choice career option. So in 1994, I was representing West Bengal as the best NCC cadet to Republic Day camp. There I did pretty well. I was declared the second best rifle shooter. I lost to a cadet from Karnataka in the tiebreaker round. And I was also shortlisted to represent India in the prestigious Indo-Canada Youth Exchange program. That program lasted for about 6 to 7 months. After my return from Canada, I was called for the SSB interview because the CDSC, which is Combined Defense Service Exam conducted by UPSC, was exempt for me. But as luck would have it, I couldn't make it to the SSB. And there was no second chance because of the existing cutoff age, of officer rank appointments in the armed forces. I was absolutely dejected, heartbroken, because I had worked hard for years to fulfill my long cherished dreams of wearing the uniform. Adding insult to my injury was the fact that most of my friends in the NCC who had not only managed to attend the SSB interview but also cracked it. So here I was, staring into wilderness, not knowing what I should be doing for my future, and being absolutely disappointed. I used to write for various newspapers during my college days. So I thought I should try my luck in journalism. And that has remained the butt of jokes for my friends who often take pot shots at my expense by calling me accidental journalist. But I tell them that's not how I view my career option. I think journalism was the closest alternative to armed forces in my ability to serve public. And those values would hold so true many, many years later when I was launching Janta Reporter as an escape room, from the so-called mainstream media, which had earned the notoriety for its flawed and distorted news and had become a platform which often broadcast biased news. The need to launch the Janta Reporter had become imminent in 2015 in light of spectacular demise of integrity and credibility in the so-called mainstream media, TV channels in particular. But the question arose as to why me? Because there already existed so many digital platforms. But there was one difference. Those digital platforms did not have the advantage that I carried with myself. And that advantage of having worked in the world's greatest newsroom at fairly top level, and that is the BBC. My years of association with the BBC had a profound impact on my news gathering ethos. And that's precisely why I found myself to be a misfit in the Indian TV ecosystem. I mean, not many of you would know that my stint with the Indian TV industry lasted for just 7 months. I was out of the industry. And since then, I haven't been able to reconcile with the fact that I could ever be a part of it again. You only have to cast your mind back on certain examples from the past to understand what working for the BBC means. Simply put, BBC is the Doordarshan of UK, with the government of the day being the paymaster of the media organization. But its editorial independence has been an envy for media outlets globally. The BBC has often fought tooth and nail, by the way. I mean, that editorial independence hasn't come naturally. BBC had to fight tooth and nail, with the government of the day to preserve its editorial freedom. Because mind you, the ruling party has often tried to manipulate the BBC's coverage in its favor. One such watershed moment came in 2004 that was immediately in the aftermath of the Allied forces attacking Iraq under Saddam Hussein regime. If you remember, Tony Blair had made a passionate speech in British Parliament saying that how UK was just 45 minutes away from being bombed by Saddam Hussein. And he has cited the stockpiling of weapons of mass destruction in Iraq. Somewhere in January 2004, we broke a news, our defense correspondent Andrew Gilligan, we broke a news that Tony Blair had effectively lied to the Parliament. And the word was that he had sexed up the dossiers on weapons of mass destruction. Our report was based on an unnamed scientist. Now, we had not revealed the identity of the scientist. But soon after we broadcast that expose, the spin doctors of 10 Downing Street, they blew the cover of the scientist to be that of David Kelly. Now, David Kelly was an eminent weapons inspector who had served in Iraq on behalf of the UN to assess whether Saddam Hussein indeed stockpiled the weapons of mass destruction and chemical weapons. Now, what happened is that as soon as his cover was blown by the spin doctors of 10 Downing Street, David Kelly's dead body was found from a field near his house. That stunned the British public. Now, it was an embarrassment for the Tony Blair government. Tony Blair started exerting pressure on the then Director General of the BBC, Greg Dyke, to sack Andrew Gilligan, the author of that report. Greg Dyke refused to do that. Instead, Greg Dyke chose to resign. What that episode did was to create a precedent whereby no future government in the UK would be able to arm twist BBC bosses to compromise our coverage in their favor, or every time they found our coverage uncomfortable, they shouldn't be able to pressurize us. Just imagine if the BBC Director General had indeed succumbed to Tony Blair's pressure and sacked our defense correspondent. That would have created a very, very dangerous precedent for the future government. Every time they found our coverage uncomfortable, they would have repeated the same shameful incidents again. So that was one example. Another example, again during Iraq war, I was working with BBC Urdu service. I was made in charge of the night coverage for our service. Now, within first few days, I started receiving some strange calls from a lady who claimed to be working in 10 Downing Street. And essentially, she wanted me to tone down our coverage in favor of the government. Mind you, UK had just joined Allied forces, to bomb Iraq, and they had already faced a lot of criticism during the Afghanistan war a couple of years ago, and there was huge protest in UK. In fact, 2003 saw at least 1 million march, that the famous 1 million march, whereby at least 1 million people from around the UK, they gathered in the hearts of London. So the war in Iraq was already very, very unpopular. So I started receiving these calls, and the lady wanted me to tone down. I wasn't prepared to do that. But I wasn't, high enough in the editorial hierarchy to ask her to literally bugger off. So I asked my editor, and who not only agreed with me, he said, look, I will follow our conversation with an email so that you are covered. If in the event that there are any reprisals or consequences for your action, you know that you can always blame me. So next evening, again, the same call came, and I literally asked the lady to bugger off. Strangely enough, there was no call after that. And even more strangely enough, there were no consequences on me. That's the BBC. Not only I remained a part of BBC for the next 10 years, I continued to grow in the organization. This is what working for the BBC means for you. So when I was trying to launch Janta, a reporter with the BBC values, behind it, it was an audacious attempt. Audacious because here I was trying to create a digital platform which would take on the might of Indian media. Thinking big has always been a part of my, who I am. I'll share a couple of more examples here. So in 1998, if you remember, Amartya Sen won the Nobel Prize for Welfare Economy. Now, soon after he won the coveted prize, he went to Calcutta, his home city. I used to work for news magazine which wasn't even published, which wasn't even launched. And Amartya Sen was the person who every journalist working for newspapers and TV channels wanted to interview. So what were the chances of I working for a magazine which wasn't even out, succeeding in securing an exclusive interview with Amartya Sen against the likes of those big names working for established newspapers and TV channels? But I called him nonetheless and even managed to secure a time slot for myself. But again, as luck would have it, because I always believe that things don't come to me very easily. So next morning when I arrived in Kolkata's Taj Bengal Hotel. I found Mr. Sen in the lobby, only to be told that the time slot given to me had been taken by prominent politicians who he couldn't say no to. He said, "I'm sorry," as he walked past to the conference room to attend a seminar where he was scheduled to speak. I was disappointed, but I wasn't prepared to give up yet. I think it was month of Ramadan. I was fasting. I used to look very skinny fellow. I used to look so miserable that most of the politicians would just take pity on me and give me interview. And it was month of Ramadan and I was fasting. So I decided to wait in the lobby. I waited for not just for 1 hour, 2 hours, but several hours until I saw Mr. Sen coming out of the conference room. He looked at me and said, "I told you I can't give you an interview." And I told him, "Sir, I'm fasting." That appeared to do the trick in my favor. Suddenly, Mr. Sen's voice or his tone became sympathetic to me, and he said, "You will die. And come with me, I'll talk to you for 10 minutes. And I knew that I had just secured an interview for at least half an hour because of the talkative person that he was. That was one example. And by the way, that interview would be the only exclusive interview he would to any journalist during that trip to Calcutta. On another occasion, when I was in college, I used to write for various newspapers. I think it was in 1992. India were playing England at Eden Gardens, were being led by Mohammad Azharuddin, who was the most sought after Indian cricket captain. I dialed into his room seeking an exclusive interview. He came on the phone. We spoke. He didn't grant me the interview. Many years later, I'm playing against Azharuddin's team in a cricket match between journalists and parliamentarians. I reminded him about that incident. Of course, he didn't remember, but he smiled at my audacity nonetheless. I may not have succeeded in getting the interview despite my audacity, from Azharuddin, but my, ability to think big and, do big paid me off many years later. In 2004, I was asked to cover Athens Olympics on behalf of the BBC. I was reporting in 4 different languages: Hindi, Urdu, Bengali, and English, writing for various platforms, and doing my daily slot on BBC World TV. That earned me an Olympic medal. I'm perhaps the only few journalists who is not only an Olympian, but Olympic medal. Here is the medal that I was given to me. It was given to me by Jack Roga, the then IOC president. This is the medal, and this is a citation. So, thinking big pays you off. So I have always believed that you should think big. Now, coming back to the Indian media landscape. Indian media landscape has undergone a sea change in the last 6 to 7 years. Gone are the days when people are solely relying on TV channels to consume their news, because the digital platforms have become incredibly powerful. And testament to that is the success of Janta Ka Reporter. Now, mind you, Janta Ka Reporter, I'll come to the first, but you have to understand that Janta Ka Reporter is run by just 3.5 people. And I said 3.5 people because that 0.5 person is my clinical psychologist's wife, who often doubles up to be a journalist whenever we are faced with the challenge of breaking news. And she's never tired of thanking me for her successful transformation from a clinical psychologist to a budding digital media journalist. Today, in 2019, we were shortlisted as one of the 10 most disruptive digital news platforms. In 2020, our monthly, we crossed 1.3 crore mark. So in a sense, our monthly page views exceeded more than 1.3 crore, with our monthly user base being between 50 to 60 lakh, 5 to 6 million. And that is the outcome of the collective effort of just 3.5 people. My only gripe is that we are not doing enough, because of the paucity of resources. Imagine if we had a bit more resources, how much impact can we create? Because I think the role of independent media, a credible media who is, presenting facts to you in an undiluted way without any fear of consequences, I think is utterly important for a functional democracy, any functional democracy. There's another change that I have noticed in the last, let's say, 1.5 years. And that change is more profound than digital platforms getting traction. What is that change? The change is that more and more TV journalists are quitting the established jobs to be independent YouTubers. I know at least one journalist who launched his YouTube channel just before the lockdown last year, and within a year he has been able to amass more than 1 million subscribers. What that means is that he may be earning several lakhs of rupees every month. The reason why I am emphasizing on the monetary income is the fact that in the past, if you spoke to TV journalists asking, why do you want to be a part of this rotten system, they would tell you, we have to run family, we have to pay EMIs, how can we leave the job? I think the success of these journalists as an independent reporters on YouTube is going to pave the way for other journalists from TV channels, to emulate their success. So I think these two incidents are absolutely profound, and also their success has largely been possible because of the strong mobile penetration coupled with cheap data, availability of cheap data, and also the connectivity, the good connectivity. So now a journalist can report from any far-flung areas in India, in a timeliness manner, and likewise a consumer, which is the news-consuming public, can access news, without much hindrance. So these two changes are going to have profound impact on the Indian media in general in time to come. So I remain incredibly optimistic about the future of the media, while also very proud of the fact that I was able to create Janta Ka Reporter as an escape rope from the blood-curdling yelling, that happens in the TV newsrooms in the name of journalism these days. So on that note, I would like to thank you again. God bless you all. Stay safe.